The wind in western Montana doesn't arrive gently. It scrapes, it worries the edges of things. It finds the gaps in old wood and settles there, whining like it has something unfinished to say. On certain nights, when the mountains hold their breath, the sound slips down the stovepipe and into Evelyn Carter's cabin, where it tangles with the crack and pop of burning pine. Evelyn listens the way she learned to overseas, still, alert, counting. She checks the front door once. The deadbolt clicks. Twice. A pause. A third time, her hand lingering on the metal as if waiting for it to speak back. Only then does she move away. The cabin is small, no frills, the kind of place built to survive winters, not people. One table, one chair, a cot pushed against the wall that never gets used. Evelyn sleeps on the floor, wrapped in a surplus army blanket that smells faintly of smoke and oil, even after all these years. Her back presses to the ground. Her palms stay open. Nothing above her she can't see. Old habits don't fade. They just go quiet. At night, the fire becomes her clock. She feeds it measured pieces of pine, listening to how the wood breaks. Sharp cracks mean mezzin. Dull pops mean air pockets. She catalogs the sounds automatically, the same way she once cataloged distant thumps, incoming or outgoing, danger or background noise. The fire snaps. Her shoulders tense just a fraction. She exhales through her nose. Not today. Not here. Evelyn Carter is 62 years old. She served 2 tours in Iraq as a combat medic with the Marine Corps, Fallujah being the one that stayed with her like shrapnel too small to remove. She doesn't tell people that anymore. Out here, there are no people to tell, just mountains, trees, a sky that feels both endless and too close. She reads old newspapers out loud in the evenings, not for the news, she doesn't care much for headlines, but for the sound of a human voice, her own voice. It comes out rough, unused, like a radio signal fighting static. County officials advise continued caution, she reads, stumbling slightly over the words. She clears her throat and starts the sentence again. Precision matters. When she finishes, the silence rushes back in. Silence used to mean safety. Now it just means more room for memory. There are rules she follows to get through the day. Coffee at 0500, fire checked before dawn, perimeter walk, slow and deliberate, eyes scanning the tree line the way they once scanned rooftops. She tells herself it's for bears. She knows better. Sometimes, standing on the edge of her clearing, she feels like a ghost haunting her own life, someone who survived when others didn't, someone who came home but never really redeployed into the world. She doesn't call it loneliness. That would imply a want. What Evelyn feels is something closer to being on permanent watch, alive, functional, but braced for a threat that never quite materializes. The wind howls harder, forcing its way through the trees. The fire flares, wood splitting with a sharp report. Her heart jumps before she can stop it. For half a second, Montana is gone. There is only heat, noise, chaos. Then she presses her boots flat against the floor, grounding herself in the cold, solid fact of where she is. "Stand down," she mutters, an old command, a useless one. Outside, the forest shifts. Somewhere beyond the tree line, metal scrapes against stone. A sound out of place, wrong. Evelyn doesn't reach for a weapon. She hasn't owned one in years. She reaches for her jacket. Some echoes, she has learned, don't fade until you walk straight toward them. The sound comes again, metal dragging, then a sharp clank like something giving way. Evelyn freezes with her jacket half on, one arm trapped in the sleeve. She listens the way she used to listen for movement on a rooftop, not with her ears, but with her whole body. Another scrape, then a low, strained noise, part growl, part breath,
like an engine trying to turn over on a dead battery. Evelyn slips her arm free and sets the jacket back on the hook. Quiet first, think second, move last. She takes the flashlight from her boots and clicks it on, angling the beam down so it doesn't blind her. The cabin is dark, except for the stove's orange pulse. She checks the window by the sink. The glass shows only her own face, pale and sharp in the reflection, eyes too awake for the hour. She opens the back door 1 inch. Cold air knifes in. The forest smells like pitch and snowpack and something else, iron, wet and bitter. She shuts the door, not because she's scared, but because she's decided. Evelyn pulls on her boots, tightens the laces with practiced, impatient fingers. She grabs the old canvas leash hanging by the door, bought months ago for no reason she ever admitted, not even to herself. Outside, the wind hits her like a slap. The stars are brutal and bright. Snow squeaks under her boots. The flashlight beam cuts a narrow tunnel through the dark, and she follows it past the stacked firewood, past the shed, toward the sound. It leads her down a shallow slope to where the pines grow tight and close. Here the wind dies. The woods feel sealed, private. Her breath clouds in front of her, then disappears. Then she sees it. A steel trap half buried in needles and ice, its jaws clamped around a leg. And attached to that leg is a dog that looks like it has been losing fights for most of its life. He's not a clean, bright-eyed rescue story. He's not the kind of dog you see in veterans' charity calendars with a flag bandana and a proud stance. He's a mix, pit bull in the head and shoulders, something lankier in the body. One ear is torn like it got caught and ripped. His coat is patchy with old scars and newer scrapes. His ribs show beneath tight skin, and his eyes are the part that stops Evelyn. They're not begging, they're assessing. The dog watches her like she's a variable, not a savior. His chest rises and falls fast, but he doesn't waste energy barking. He's saving what he has. Evelyn lowers the flashlight. She crouches slowly, keeping her hands visible, palms open. Her voice comes out in the tone she once used with wounded Marines, flat, steady, like a handrail. "Easy," she says. "I'm not here to make it worse." The dog's lip curls. Not dramatic, not a warning meant to scare her off, just reflex, pain doing what pain does. Evelyn studies the trap. Cheap metal, strong spring. Someone set it for coyotes, maybe, or for anything that moved. The dog must have wandered too close, or been forced too close. She notices the chain leading from the trap to a stake in the ground, rusted, driven deep. A tether. That's when her throat tightens, because she knows what it is to be tethered to something you can't outrun. The dog shifts, trying to pull back. The trap bites harder. He lets out a sound, short, choked, like he's swallowing his own panic. Evelyn's hands move before she thinks. Combat medic hands. Hands that have pressed gauze into places they didn't want to look at. Hands that have worked fast, even while their own Colts tried to sabotage them. "Hold still," she tells him, not as a request, as a plan. She reaches into her pocket and pulls out a strip of cloth, an old bandana, faded. She tosses it near his muzzle. He sniffs it once, distrustful, but the scent of her, smoke, wool and something steady, seems to anchor him just enough. Evelyn slides closer, careful of teeth, careful of sudden movement. She places one hand on the ground, letting him see it. Then she grips the trap with the other, testing the spring. The metal is cold enough to sting. Her fingers slip. She adjusts. The dog growls low, but he doesn't lunge. He doesn't try to. He looks tired, like he's been doing this alone for a long time. Evelyn leans in, voice quieter now, more for herself than him. "I get it. I do." She braces her boot against the trap and pries the jaws apart with both hands. The spring fights her. For a second, it's like trying to open a door that wants to stay closed. Then the metal gives. The dog jerks his leg free so fast he stumbles. He limps back, putting distance between them, but not running. He can't. The chain snaps tight, yanking him short. He collapses into the leaves, panting hard, eyes never leaving her. Evelyn looks at the chain, looks at the stake. The simple cruelty of it makes her jaw clench. She stands, shoulders squared against the cold, and for the first time in years, something like anger warms her from the inside out. "All right," she says to the dark, to whoever did this, to the past, to the part of herself that keeps choosing isolation like it's a virtue. All right. She plants her boots beside the stake, grips it with both hands, and pulls. The earth resists. So does Evelyn. She pulls again, harder, until the ground finally gives up its claim and the stake comes free with a wet, ugly sound. The dog startles, scrambling, chain clattering, ready to bolt. Evelyn doesn't reach for him. She steps back and sets the loose end of the chain on the ground between them, like laying down a weapon. "You can go, or you can stay close. Your call." The dog stares at the chain, then at her. His head tilts just a fraction, like he's trying to remember what choice feels like. He takes one limping step forward, not towards freedom, towards her.
He doesn't come all the way, not even close. He stops at the edge of the flashlight's spill, where the dark still belongs to him. His paw lifts, shakes once, then settles carefully back to the ground, like every ounce of pressure has to be negotiated. Evelyn keeps her posture loose, no looming, no sudden reach. She's seen what a cornered creature does, human or otherwise. "Okay," she says, like she's talking to a skittish private on his first day outside the wire. "We're going to do this slow." The dog's breath fogs the air in quick bursts. He's still wired, still ready to bite the world before it bites him again. Evelyn recognizes the stance, the forward-leaning chest, the weight distributed like he could explode in any direction. Hypervigilance with fur. She clicks the flashlight off. The darkness swallows them both. It's a risk, but it's also respect. Light can feel like a spotlight, like exposure. In the dark, they're equals, two silhouettes in a cold forest, listening for what comes next. Evelyn turns and starts walking back toward the cabin without looking over her shoulder. She makes her steps deliberate, audible, a steady pace, like a metronome, not fleeing, not chasing, just moving. Behind her, metal clinks once, then nothing. Then snow squeaks softly. He's following. When she reaches the clearing, she pauses long enough to open the back door and hold it. Warm air spills out, smelling of smoke and pine resin. She steps inside and leaves the door open. If he wants to vanish into the trees, he can. Evelyn sits on the floor, back against the bed frame that no one sleeps in. She sets her boots flat, hands on her knees. No talking, no coaxing. She knows the drill. Outside the doorway, the dog lingers. Evelyn can't see him, but she can hear him. Tiny shifts of weight, the faint click of chain links, a soft exhale that doesn't sound relieved so much as stunned. Minutes pass. The stove pops. The wind returns, testing the cabin's seams. The dog steps onto the threshold and stops, as if there's an invisible line there. He won't cross into warmth without paying for it somehow. That's what his body believes. Evelyn reaches to the side and drags an old stainless steel bowl across the floor. The sound is harsh in the quiet, metal on wood. It makes the dog flinch. "Sorry," she muttered, more reflex than apology. She pours water into the bowl. Then, after a beat, she opens a can of beef stew from her supplies. Not dog food, human food. It's what she has ready, and it's what she would have eaten anyway. She dumps it into another bowl and sets both near the doorway. Then she slides them forward with the edge of her boot, no hands involved. The dog doesn't rush. He watches her,
eyes flicking to her hands, to her face, to the corners of the room, mapping exits like a soldier. Evelyn stays still. She doesn't look at him directly. Direct eye contact can feel like a challenge. She lets her gaze rest somewhere neutral, on the stove, on the shadowed wall. Finally, the dog limps in far enough to reach the bowls. He lowers his head and sniffs. His body remains tense, ready to retreat. Then he eats, fast, messy, like he expects someone to snatch it away mid-bite. Evelyn doesn't speak. She listens to the sound of him swallowing. It's a sound that feels indecently intimate in a place this quiet. When he finishes, he laps water, then lifts his head and stares at her again. Closer now, still wary, but he's inside. Evelyn exhales slowly. Not relief, not yet, more like recalibration. She stands and goes to the small shelf where she keeps first aid supplies. They aren't labeled as such, just a plain box. She pulls out gauze, antiseptic wipes, a roll of wrap. When she turns back, the dog is already backing toward the door, anticipating what comes next. Evelyn stops several feet away and lowers herself to the floor again, making her body smaller. She sets the supplies down in front of her, then pushes them a little closer to him, like offering tools instead of control. "I'm going to clean it," she says, her voice calm and unadorned. "It's going to sting, then it won't." The dog's twitches. He understands tone more than words. Evelyn takes a wipe, tears the packet open slowly, letting the sound happen where he can hear it. She extends her hand, not toward his face, but toward the injured leg, palm down, fingers relaxed. He growls low, not anger, a boundary. Evelyn stops. She waits. Her knee aches in the cold. She doesn't shift. After a long minute, the dog inches forward, then stops again, breathing hard through his nose. His eyes glisten in the firelight. He's trying to decide which pain is safer, the pain of her touch or the pain of staying like this. Evelyn keeps her hand steady. "You don't have to like it," she tells him. "Just let me do my job." He lowers his head, almost imperceptibly, and that tiny movement feels like permission. Evelyn cleans the wound with quick, efficient motions. The dog flinches but doesn't snap. She wraps the leg, tight enough to support, not tight enough to cut circulation. Her fingers are sure, practiced. When she's done, she pulls back and sits on her heels. The dog stands there, blinking as if surprised the moment ended without punishment. Evelyn looks at him, really looks, and sees the story written into his body. Old scars that don't match accidents, a collar line rubbed raw long ago, the wary intelligence of an animal that has learned people can be unpredictable. She shouldn't keep him. She knows that. A dog means noise, needs, attachment. A dog means risk. But when she glances at the unused dog food in her pantry, still stacked, still waiting, something tight in her chest loosens, just a hair. "You got a name?" she asks, knowing he won't answer. The dog shifts, then limps to the doorway and lies down, half in, half out, placing his body across the threshold, like a guard, not inside like he belongs, not outside like he's leaving. A compromise. Evelyn watches him settle. Her throat tightens again, not with fear this time, but with a feeling she can't label yet, something old and almost forgotten, being watched over. She turns off the lamp and lets the cabin go dark except for the stove's glow. Then, because the silence feels too big, she reaches for the newspaper and begins to read again, her voice low, steady, filling the room like a slow pulse. On the floor by the door, the dog's breathing eases into a rhythm. And Evelyn, for the first time in years, falls asleep without checking the lock a fourth time. Summer doesn't arrive in the high country like a celebration. It comes the way a mood swings in, bright one moment, sharp the next. By mid-July, the mornings are clear enough to fool you, the sky a clean blue, the kind that makes tourists pull over for photos. But Evelyn doesn't take photos. She watches the horizon like it owes her an explanation. The dog, Cooper, because the name lands in her mouth one evening and stays there, has been with her long enough now that the cabin has changed shape around him. Not physically, the same creaking boards, the same stove, the same chair no one sits in. But there's a new constant, a presence that moves quietly, that listens without being asked. Cooper still doesn't like sudden hands. He flinches if Evelyn reaches too fast. He still eats like the bowl might disappear. Yet at night he sleeps outside her door, body angled toward the hallway, head up whenever the wind shifts. It's not affection, it's duty, a job he assigned himself the way some men assign themselves the job of staying awake so others can rest. Evelyn respects that kind of loyalty. She doesn't talk about it. On a late afternoon, the air turns heavy. The light goes strange, flat, drained of color, as if someone's pulled a filter over the world. Evelyn steps outside and smells rain before she hears it. Her knees ache with the pressure change. Her scalp prickles. Cooper's head snaps up. His ears, one torn, one intact, tilt towards something far away. Evelyn follows his gaze to the ridgeline. Clouds stack there like bruises. She tells herself it's just weather. Montana makes storms the way it makes winter, without apology. Inside, she goes through her chores with the same measured pace. She fills the kettle, she checks the woodpile, she closes the shutters halfway, not because she's worried about the storm, but because she likes controlling what she can control. Then the first thunder rolls in. It isn't loud at first. It's a low, distant rumble that trembles through the cabin's bones, a sound that starts in the ground and climbs up into your ribs. Evelyn's hand pauses on the kettle handle. Her jaw tightens. She swallows once, hard. The second thunderclap is closer, sharp, cracking, followed by a rattling aftershock that bounces off the mountains. Evelyn's body reacts before her mind can label it. Her shoulders jump, her breath catches and turns shallow. Her vision narrows, the edges of the room fading like someone is dimming a stage. She hears the storm. She also hears something else, braided into it, dull concussions, the kind that lifted dust off streets, the kind that made grown men go quiet mid-sentence. Her fingers curl into a fist without her permission. Cooper mises, watching her. Evelyn doesn't see him, not really, not at first. She's gone halfway already. The third thunderclap hits, and the cabin windows shiver. Evelyn's brain snaps a line between then and now. Montana and Fallujah fold into each other like paper. Her heart slams hard against her ribs, each beat a blunt impact, too loud, too fast. She backs away from the window, crouches low automatically, shoulders hunched. Her hands search for something that isn't there anymore, gear, a bag, a weapon, a radio with a call sign. She ends up in the narrow space between the bed and the wall, the place where she sleeps because it's the place she can disappear into. Her breathing turns ragged, in through the nose, too little, out through the mouth, too much. In the dim light, shadows stretch into shapes that don't belong in a cabin. The stove's glow flickers like flames seen through smoke. The air feels thick. Evelyn's lips move, barely sound. Incoming, she whispers, as if naming it makes it manageable. Then quieter, like a prayer she hates needing. Not again, not again. Outside, rain begins to hammer the roof. The wind throws itself at the walls. Thunder detonates so close the cabin seems to recoil. Evelyn curls tighter, forearms over her head, bracing for impact that won't come, but her body doesn't know that. Her body believes what it learnt. Loud noise means danger. Bright flash means blast. The next second decides who stays breathing. Her chest tightens until it feels like a hand is squeezing her lungs. She cannot speak. She cannot stand. She cannot reach for the calm thoughts she tells herself she should have. And then Cooper moves. His nails click on the floorboards, quick and sure. He doesn't bark, he doesn't whine, he doesn't circle at a distance the way he used to when he didn't trust her panic. He walks straight to the space where she's folded in on herself and lowers his body beside her, close enough that she feels heat, weight, solidity. Evelyn flinches, startled, trying to push him away, but her arms feel weak and her hands don't know what they're grabbing. Cooper presses in, not crushing, not aggressive, just firm. His shoulder against her ribs, his side against her thighs, a heavy, steady pressure that makes it hard for her to curl tighter, hard for her to float away into memory. Evelyn's breath catches again. She shakes, small tremors running through her like faulty wiring. Cooper adjusts, laying more of his weight across her lap, anchoring her. His head rests near her hip. His breathing is slow, deliberate, as if he's lending her his rhythm. In that pressure, something shifts. The panic doesn't vanish, but it stops gaining ground. Evelyn's eyes find the floorboards. 1, 2, 3 knots in the wood. Her mind grabs at details like a rope. This is pine. This is a cabin. This is now. Thunder cracks again. She still jolts, but the jolt has a boundary. Cooper is that boundary. She gulps air, forcing it deeper. Her hands, still trembling, find his fur. It's coarse in places, missing in others, scar tissue under her fingertips. Good, she manages, voice scraped raw. Not praise, a report. Good boy. Cooper doesn't respond. He just stays. Minutes stretch. The storm rages like it has nowhere else to go. Rain streams down the windows. Wind throws debris against the cabin. But inside that narrow space, Evelyn's breathing slows from a sprint to a jog. Her heartbeat stops trying to break free from her chest. The adrenaline drains in slow, bitter waves. Her muscles ache from tension she didn't choose. Evelyn's eyes sting. Not tears, not yet, just the body recovering. She keeps one hand on Cooper's side, feeling the rise and fall. Proof, evidence, a living, warm fact. Outside, thunder rolls farther away. Inside, Evelyn leans her forehead against the wall and lets her eyes close for the first time since the storm began. And in the dark, she hears herself think, clear and simple, like a line written in a field manual. Stay present, breathe, check your surroundings, you are here. Cooper remains pressed against her like a sandbag wall, like cover. When the worst of the storm finally passes, Evelyn doesn't stand right away. She just sits there, feeling the weight, letting her nervous system learn a new lesson. Not every loud sound ends in loss. Not every flash is fire. Sometimes it's just weather. And sometimes, without asking permission, a battered dog decides you're worth guarding.
By the time August settles in, the mountain changes its tone. The mornings come colder, the shadows stretch longer across the clearing. Evelyn notices it the way she notices everything, quietly, automatically, like a medic reading a patient's color and breathing without needing to announce it. Cooper heals, but he never becomes soft. His limp fades into something subtle, a slight hitch when he climbs over roots too fast. The wrap comes off. The raw skin around his ankle toughens. Still, he keeps his distance from strangers, if strangers ever existed out here, and he keeps his eyes on the tree line, as if it's a door that might open at any moment.
Evelyn doesn't try to train him like a pet. She doesn't need tricks. She needs reliability. Cooper offers that in his own language: presence, patience, warning. Some days she catches him standing completely still, nose lifted, body angled toward the valley, not chasing deer, not watching birds, listening. Evelyn pretends not to notice at first. It's easier to let the world remain muted, easier to keep living inside the cabin's tight perimeter where nothing surprises her. But on one particular afternoon, the air shifts in a way that makes her skin prickle. The light takes on a dull cast, as if the sun has been rubbed with ash. She steps outside with her coffee and stops mid-sip. The wind isn't wind anymore. It's a slow, heavy push. And underneath it, faint but unmistakable, is a smell that doesn't belong in clean mountain air. Smoke. Not the friendly smoke of her wood stove, not campfire smoke that drifts and vanishes. This is sharper, chemical, bitter, layered with something green and living being forced to burn. Cooper paces the edge of the clearing, nails ticking against rock, breath quick. He stops, stares down valley, then looks back at Evelyn, direct, urgent, before he swings his head again, like he's trying to drag her attention with him. Evelyn takes another breath. Smoke, yes, far away though. It could be lightning strike. It could be someone burning brush down by the river. She tries to file it under not her problem. That's how she's survived the last few years. Keep your circle small, handle what's inside it, let the rest go. Cooper doesn't let it go. He trots to her, bumps his shoulder into her leg, light but insistent, then turns and trots back to the tree line, looking over his shoulder as if to say, "Move." Evelyn stiffens at the contact. The old reflex flares, "Don't crowd me, don't push." Then she feels the steadiness in it, not demand, not dominance, a warning. She sets the mug down on the porch rail and steps to the edge of the clearing. The valley below is usually crisp, green, a clean drop into distance. Today, a thin haze hangs there, barely visible, like a veil. Evelyn narrows her eyes. Her mind begins to work in a way it hasn't in a long time. Rapid assessment, prioritizing, planning. She turns and goes inside. The radio sits on the nightstand where it always sits. She flips it on. Static first, then a voice, tinny and clipped, giving weather updates, a mention of red flag warnings and increased fire activity in the county. Evelyn's stomach tightens. She knows that phrase, red flag. She's heard it from firefighters down in town. She's heard it from guys who fought wildland fires after getting out. Same adrenaline, different uniform. Outside, Cooper lets out a single bark, not frantic, not playful, a marker. Evelyn walks to the window. The sky over the far ridge has turned a strange color, an orange that looks bruised, sick. The sunlight filtering through the haze gives everything a counterfeit glow. She doesn't panic. She goes into checklist mode. She drags the old duffel bag from under the bed, packed, always packed, because part of her never stopped deploying. She checks it: water, first aid kit, flashlight, extra batteries, a map of the area with hand-marked trails. She adds a few things without thinking: her challenge coin, the folded flag's glass case, left behind because it's too big, too heavy, too symbolic to haul when seconds matter. On the counter, she lines up essentials: keys, radio, phone with a half-charged battery. She curses under her breath and plugs it in. Cooper stands by the door, body rigid, ears forward. He doesn't pace now. He waits. He has delivered the message. Now he's ready to execute. Evelyn opens the pantry to grab canned food, and, without meaning to, her hand brushes the dog food again. still plenty left. She had been buying it like a superstition, like an insurance policy against having to admit she cared. She takes 2 bags anyway and shoves them in the duffel. Efficient, practical, not emotional. Outside, the wind shifts again, and the smoke smell strengthens. The air tastes wrong, dry, gritty. Evelyn steps onto the porch and looks toward the valley. The haze thickens. It's not a veil now, it's a warning banner. Somewhere beyond sight, something large is burning. Cooper moves closer, pressing his side briefly against her leg, the way he did during the storm, that grounding touch. Evelyn doesn't flinch this time. She places her hand on the top of his head, just for a second, a simple, firm contact. Then she pulls away, because she's not ready to linger. "All right," she says, voice low, matter of fact, like she's speaking into a headset. "We prep." She checks the truck, old, reliable, kept fueled out of habit. She makes sure the path down the mountain is clear. She wets towels and lays them by the door. She fills every container with water. She closes windows, not for comfort, but for the slow to smoke if it comes. By dusk, the sky has turned a deeper orange. The sun sinks behind a smear of haze, looking like a warning light on a dashboard. The woods go quiet, not peaceful quiet, the wrong kind. The birds vanish, even the insects seem to stop. Evelyn stands in the doorway, duffel at her feet, radio in her hand, and listens to that silence with a medic's dread. The eerie quiet before the storm, only this time it isn't a storm. Cooper lifts his head, nostrils flaring, and gives a low, grumbling sound that doesn't come from his throat so much as his chest. Evelyn follows his gaze into the darkening trees, and for the first time since she came to this mountain to disappear, she understands something simple and brutal. The world has found her again.
The first ember doesn't announce itself. It arrives like a rumor, an extra bite in the air, a faint grit on the tongue. Then the wind changes, and the rumor becomes fact. Evelyn is at the sink when the light outside turns the wrong color. Not sunset orange, not the warm gold of late summer. This is a dirty, pressurized blow, as if the sky is lit from behind by a furnace. She looks up and sees it through the window, smoke moving low and fast between the pines, pushed by gusts that don't wander, they charge. Cooper is already at the door, body locked forward, tail stiff, head angled toward the tree line like a compass needle that's found its north. He doesn't bark, he doesn't need to. Everything in him says the same thing. Now. Evelyn grabs the duffel, keys, radio, phone. The checklist snaps into place like a magazine seating clean. She reaches for the door latch, and the world detonates. A roar surges over the cabin, sudden and enormous, like a jet engine dropping into the clearing. The windows rattle, the stovepipe vibrates. Somewhere outside, a tree cracks, sharp, violent, and falls with a sound that shakes the ground. Evelyn's hand freezes on the latch. For a breath, Montana disappears. The roar becomes something else in her mind, heavy, sustained, coming too close. The crack of wood becomes a concussive thump. The cabin walls become a thin shelter that won't hold. Her brain pulls a familiar file without asking her permission. Fallujah. Not the place exactly, the feeling. Heat where there shouldn't be heat. Noise that eats thought. The sense that the next second could erase you. She tries to move anyway, tries to do what she's trained to do, but her legs lock, her throat closes. The air in the cabin turns thick with smoke seeping in around the seams, and that smell, burning, acrid, hooks the oldest part of her nervous system and yanks.
Her vision narrows to a tunnel, the edges smear. The fire's roar outside fills her ears until it feels like it's inside her skull. She stands in the middle of the room and goes nowhere, as if her body has decided the safest move is to stop existing. The wood stove pops, a sharp report, and her shoulders jerk hard. Her hand flies up to cover her head before she even understands why. She hears herself whisper, barely sound, "Get down." But there's nowhere to get down to that will make it stop. Cooper slams into her leg, harder than before, not gentle now, not tentative, a solid, living impact. His weight is a blunt anchor against her shin, her knee, her hip. He shoves again, insisting, pushing his body into hers with purpose. Evelyn stumbles, catches herself on the table, breath ragged. The roar rises outside, then drops, then rises again, wind feeding flame in pulses. To Evelyn's brain, the rhythm matches something it remembers too well, the cadence of danger, the sound of a world coming apart. Cooper moves in front of her, blocks her line of sight to the window. He presses his chest against her thighs and leans, full body pressure, grounding, forcing her attention down into weight and warmth and the undeniable fact of him. Evelyn's hands shake, her fingers scrabble at his fur like they're searching for a handle. Cooper lifts his head and meets her eyes, not pleading, not fearful, steady, present, commanding in the quiet way he has. Evelyn tries to inhale, and the smoke makes her cough, short, harsh. The cough snaps something loose. She blinks, and the cabin swims back into focus. The stove, the duffel, the door, the real door. Cooper nudges the duffel with his nose, then bumps her knee again, harder, like a sergeant tapping a map. Here, move, now. Evelyn swallows. Her mouth tastes like pennies and ash. She forces air in through her nose. She forces it out slower than it wants to go. One breath becomes two. Two becomes enough to stand. "All right," she mutters, not to him, not to herself, just into the moment. All right. Outside, something collapses with a deep rolling crash. The cabin shudders. Cooper doesn't flinch. He doesn't look back. He plants himself against her legs like cover and then pivots toward the door, shoulder brushing her shin, guiding her the way he guided her out of storms inside her head. Evelyn grabs the latch this time and wrenches it open. Heat punches in, smoke claws at her eyes. The night has turned into a moving wall of orange and black. For a split second, the sound tries to become artillery again. Cooper presses into her calf, firm, insistent, and the pressure drags her back into the only thing that matters. Not the past, not the memory, the next step. Evelyn tightens the grip on the duffel, wraps her other hand around the old leash, and lets Cooper pull her forward into the living, brutal present. The air outside is a throatful of grit. It scrapes on the way in, burns on the way out. Evelyn blinks and her eyes water immediately. Tears that aren't emotion, just her body trying to rinse out ash. The world has been rewritten in orange. Firelight flickers through the trees, not steady like her stove, but hungry and restless. Smoke rolls low across the ground in thick sheets, hiding roots and rocks and whatever comes next. The wind shoves at her back as if it wants her to run faster, as if it's her enemy and her escort at the same time. Cooper moves first, not frantic, not confused, purposeful. He takes the lead without looking back, the old chain clinking softly with each stride. Evelyn grips the leash out of habit, then realizes she's holding on to something else too, an anchor, a line, a promise of direction when her own sense of direction is dissolving. Her boots hit the ground hard, the soil is warm, almost hot, like the earth is feverish. Each step sends a small puff of ash up around her ankles. Her heart pounds in her ears, a blunt thump-thump that tries to drown out everything else. She tastes smoke, she tastes fear. The cabin behind them groans, wood under stress, then a sharp snap, like a bone breaking. Evelyn's body tries to turn, tries to look back. Cooper doesn't allow it. He surges forward, and the leash jerks, pulling her attention back to him. He's cutting toward the narrow trail that snakes through the pines, one Evelyn uses for her perimeter walks, but the smoke has swallowed it. The world looks unfamiliar, as if someone has rearranged the forest while she wasn't looking. Cooper finds it anyway. He lowers his head and moves in short, decisive bursts, stopping for half a beat here and there to sniff, then driving on. His breathing is fast, but his focus is locked. Evelyn runs, lungs tight, shoulders hunched. She keeps her mouth closed when she can, breathes through her nose despite the sting, the way she once did in dust storms overseas. The smoke makes her cough anyway, short, painful hacks that steal oxygen. Her mind tries to split in two, one part in the now, one part in the then. The roar of fire is too close to the roar she remembers. The wind whips hot across her face like the backwash from explosions. She whispers under her breath, counting steps like she used to count seconds between sounds. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. It's not logic, it's control. Cooper cuts left, then right, weaving around fallen branches and pockets of flame that lick at dry grass. Embers drift through the air like angry snow. One lands on Evelyn's sleeve, and she slaps it out without slowing down. The trees start to crackle overhead. A shower of sparks rains down, and Evelyn throws her forearm over her face. Cooper darts under a thicker stand of pines, where the air is marginally clearer, then stops, sudden, throwing his body sideways like a barrier. Evelyn nearly collides with him. In front of them, a section of ground smoulders, an invisible heat trap, a bed of burning duff hidden under ash. One step there, and her boot would have sunk into fire. Cooper snorts, backs up, then angles them around the edge, picking a line where the smoke thins for a breath. Evelyn's throat tightens again, not from panic this time, but from something like awe, this dog navigating like he's got a map printed on his ribs. They push forward. The wind shifts violently, and with it the fire's voice changes pitch, higher, closer, more aggressive. The roar swells until it sounds like something alive chasing them. Evelyn's lungs scream, her legs burn. She feels her body approaching that point where it stops obeying. Then Cooper does something she doesn't expect. He slows. Not because he's tired, because he's checking on her. He glances back, just once, and she sees it, the quick inventory he takes, the way his eyes scan her face for signs she's going to drop. He adjusts his pace to match her, then nudges forward again, guiding. Evelyn clamps her hand harder around the leash. The lever bites her palm. Good. Pain means she's here. They crest a small rise, and the wind hits them full in the face, bringing a wave of heat so strong it feels like standing too close to an open oven. Evelyn staggers.
Cooper pivots immediately and presses against her thigh. Deep pressure, the same grounding contact from the storm, then moves again, insisting keep going. Evelyn forces her feet to lift. She keeps moving because stopping feels like surrender, and she has surrendered enough things in her life. Ahead, through the smoke, she catches a glimpse of rock, dark, jagged, a cut in the land, a ravine maybe, a drainage line, a place where fire might have less fuel. Cooper heads straight for it, like he's been waiting for this moment. They descend, sliding on loose dirt and ash, Evelyn grabbing at branches for balance. Her fingers come away black. The air changes as they drop, cooler, damp with the faint scent of water, or at least the memory of it. For the first time in minutes, Evelyn can breathe a full breath without coughing. She looks down at Cooper, his shoulders pumping, his scars bright in the firelight, and a thought hits her with the blunt clarity of a truth she has avoided. This dog isn't just following her, he's leading her. The leash in her hand isn't a restraint anymore, it's a lifeline. And Evelyn, who has lived years convinced she was done being saved by anyone, runs on, holding tight to that line, because for once she believes there's somewhere on the other side worth reaching.
The ravine narrows the farther they go. What began as a shallow cut in the land tightens into a choke point, rock walls rising on either side, close enough that Evelyn can brush them with her elbows as she stumbles forward. The ground drops sharply, then levels out into a narrow run choked with fallen branches and dry brush that should have been wet this time of year, but isn't. Nothing is wet anymore. The fire reaches the ravine's edge behind them with a sound like a living thing discovering prey. Heat pours down the walls, smoke funnels in, thick and suffocating, stealing the oxygen that felt so briefly earned. Cooper slows again, not from fatigue, but calculation. He scans ahead, then back, then ahead once more, body angling to block Evelyn from the worst of the heat as embers rain down in bursts. They round a bend, and the path ends. A massive pine, burned hollow at the core, has collapsed across the ravine. It lies there like a barricade, trunk wedged tight between the rock walls, flames crawling along its length. Fire chews through what's left of the wood, sending sparks spiraling upward. Evelyn stops short, her chest heaving. For a split second, the old helplessness rears, cornered, boxed in, no clean exit. Her mind tries to do what it's always done in those moments, inventory blame, missed signs, wrong choices. Cooper doesn't allow it. He moves forward without hesitation, testing the space beneath the fallen trunk. There's a gap, low, tight, barely enough room for a person to crawl through before the fire claims it completely. He looks back at Evelyn, eyes sharp and steady. Now. Evelyn drops to her knees. The heat is brutal this close, licking at her skin, singeing the air. She can feel the fire's impatience. She shoves the duffel ahead of her and starts to crawl. The ground is hot enough to burn through fabric. Her palms scream. Her breath comes in ragged pulls. Smoke fills her mouth, her nose. Halfway through, the trunk shifts with a violent crack. Evelyn freezes. Behind her, Cooper wedges himself against the log, shoulders pressed hard, legs braced. He pushes, not with panic, but with everything he has, holding the trunk just high enough to keep the gap open. Evelyn understands immediately. "No!" she gasps, trying to turn back. "No!" The heat surges. Flames race along the log, wrapping around Cooper's flank. He flinches, but doesn't move, doesn't retreat. His eyes stay locked on hers through the smoke. He barks once, short, sharp. Not fear, command. Evelyn's throat tightens so hard she can barely swallow. She wants to fight him, wants to grab him, pull him through. Damn the burns, damn the odds. But this isn't chaos. This is a choice. The old chain, still loosely looped around Cooper's neck, snags on a jagged knot of burning wood. Evelyn reaches for it instinctively, fingers brushing hot metal. Cooper shakes his head once, decisive. The chain goes taut. For a heartbeat, the world holds still. In that moment, Evelyn sees it clearly, not sentiment, not tragedy, but something clean and unbearable in its clarity. Cooper is doing his job. The job he chose the night he lay down across her doorway. The job of holding the line so someone else can get through. Evelyn lets go. She scrambles forward, dragging herself through the last stretch of dirt and ash. She rolls clear on the other side, coughing, sobbing air into her lungs. Behind her, the trunk collapses. Fire roars through the space where Cooper stood. The ravine fills with light and sound and finality. Evelyn screams his name once, raw, torn from somewhere deeper than language, but the fire answers back, louder. She lies there shaking, face pressed to the dirt, the heat at her back, the cool earth beneath her cheek. And in the terrible quiet that follows the collapse, one truth settles into her bones, heavy and irreversible. Cooper did not get lost. He stayed.
Rain doesn't arrive like mercy. It arrives like a correction. At first, it's only a few drops, fat and cold, striking the ash around Evelyn's boots and turning it into dark paste. Each drop hits a hot ember and answers with a sharp hiss, a sound like a wound being cleaned. Then the sky opens wider and the rain thickens, tapping the burned ground in a steady rhythm that feels almost unreal after the roar. Evelyn stands on a strip of exposed rock above the ravine, swaying slightly. Her lungs drag for air that still tastes wrong. Her hair reeks of smoke. Her hands are black to the wrists. The duffel hangs from her shoulder like a piece of someone else's life. Behind her, the fire line keeps moving, but slower now, pushed back by wind and wet and the simple physics of fuel running out. The forest below is a wreck of silhouettes, trees stripped bare, trunks glowing faintly at the base, the ground littered with smoking debris that looks like the bones of the mountain. She turns her head once, toward the ravine, toward the place where the log fell. Nothing. No clink of chain, no heavy breath, no blunt shoulder pressing her back into the present. Only rain and steam, and a silence that feels too big to hold. Evelyn's knees threaten to buckle, and she lets them. She sits down hard in the mud and ash, not caring what it does to her clothes. The cold ground seeps into her thighs, into her spine. She stares at her hands as if they might tell her what to do next. They don't. Somewhere in the distance, a siren cuts through the rain, long, wavering, then joined by another. The sound echoes off the slopes and comes back thinner, like the mountains are repeating it at half strength. It's the first human sound she's heard in hours, maybe longer. Evelyn tries to stand. Her legs don't cooperate at first. When they finally do, she moves downhill in short, uneven steps, following the faint rise and fall of the siren, guided by instinct and the stubborn refusal to lie down and disappear. A flashlight beam appears through the smoke ahead, then another. Voices follow,
tight, professional, calling out into the haze. "Ma'am, over here!" Evelyn lifts one arm. It feels heavy, like it's made of wet sand. They reach her fast. Two firefighters in yellow gear, faces smeared, eyes sharp. One of them looks her over in quick, efficient sweeps, the way Evelyn once triaged bodies. Breathing, burns, bleeding, shock. "Can you walk?" the firefighter asks. Evelyn nods because it's easier than explaining. She lets them take her elbows. The contact is careful, respectful. They don't yank. They don't crowd. They move her like someone who has earned the right to choose her own pace. As they guide her toward a dirt road where an ambulance waits, Evelyn keeps turning her head as if Cooper might be behind her, trotting up with that determined gait, chain rattling, eyes saying, "Keep moving." But the space behind her stays empty. The ambulance lights strobe red through the rain, washing the burned world in pulses. The sound of the engine idling is steady, mechanical, safe. A medic, young, tired, wraps a blanket around Evelyn's shoulders. The blanket is scratchy and smells like plastic, but it's warm. They ask her name. She answers. They ask if she's alone. The word catches in her throat. She could say yes. She has said yes to the world for years. Instead, she looks past them, back at the blackened slope, and her mouth opens with a sound she doesn't recognize at first. It's not a sob, not the neat kind of crying people do in movies. It's a full-body release, air leaving her in ragged bursts, her throat working like it's trying to push something lodged there for decades. Tears cut clean tracks down her soot-streaked face. Her shoulders shake. She presses the heel of her hand to her mouth to quiet it, but it keeps coming because it's been waiting a long time. The young medic pauses, unsure. Evelyn shakes her head, a small gesture that says, "Let it happen," because she understands now, in the simplest terms, what Cooper did. He didn't save her so she could go back to hiding. He stayed so she would have no excuse left to stop living. And as the rain keeps hissing against the hot ash, Evelyn cries the first honest cry she's had since Iraq. Grief, yes, but also something else threaded through it, like light. A fierce, unwanted, undeniable will to move forward.
A year later, the mountain looks different. Not healed, not the way people like to say, but changed. The scar is still there. Black trunks stand like fence posts across the slope. New grass pushes up anyway, thin and stubborn, the color of a fresh bruise turning green. In spring, wildflowers show up in places that used to be ash, bright little insults against all that loss. Evelyn doesn't live in the cabin anymore. She goes back sometimes, but only in daylight, only with the windows open. The bed is still made tight, corners squared. The floor mat is still there, rolled neatly. The place feels like a version of her that she outgrew in one terrible night. Now she rents a small house closer to town. Nothing fancy. 2 rooms, a porch, a mailbox with a number that actually means something to the outside world. She still wakes early. She still checks locks, though only once most nights. She still flinches at sudden bangs, but she has learned to keep her feet on the ground when her mind tries to run. She goes to the VFW on Tuesdays. The first time she walked in, the air hit her like memory. Beer, old wood, coffee that had been cooking too long. Conversation stalled for a beat as heads turned. New faces always get measured in those rooms. Evelyn held herself the way she always had. Chin level, shoulders squared, prepared to leave if the space pressed too close. A man at the bar, gray beard, ball cap with a unit patch, nodded once, like a silent welcome home that didn't demand anything back. She nodded once in return. That was enough. She didn't talk much at first. She listened. She let stories wash over her, some told with humor, some with anger, some with a quiet that felt familiar. When someone asked what brought her in, she said the only truth she could manage. A dog, she told them. That got her a few looks, confused, amused, softened. People in those rooms understand odd lifelines. They've had their own. She started volunteering at the county shelter after that, the one down by the highway with chain link runs and concrete floors that always smelled like bleach and fear. The staff recognized her immediately, not because she was friendly, but because she moved with calm purpose. She didn't baby talk the dogs, she didn't flinch at growls, she respected boundaries. They gave her the ones nobody else wanted. The scarred ones, the ones who stared too hard, the ones who barked that they were trying to keep the world from touching them again. Evelyn called it watchstanding. She didn't say therapy, she didn't say healing. She said, I can sit with them. And she did. She sat on kennel floors with a bowl of water nearby, her hands open, her breathing slow, reading headlines out loud the way she used to in her cabin, letting her voice become a steady line that animals, and sometimes people, could hold on to. Eventually, the town asked her to speak at a small community event, a fundraiser for wildfire recovery and veteran support. A local radio host offered to record it, said they could air it as a segment. Evelyn almost said no, almost disappeared into old habits. Then she remembered Cooper's eyes through the smoke. Now she sits in a modest studio, just a mic, a pair of headphones, a producer on the other side of glass, telling the story into the air where strangers can hear it. Her voice is still rough, but it holds steady. She doesn't dramatize the fire. She doesn't chase pity. She talks about the sound of the log snapping, the way her body betrayed her, the way a battered dog pressed his weight against her and made the present inevitable. She pauses in the right places, lets silence do its work. I didn't rescue him, Evelyn says into the mic. I just took the chain off. He did the rest. On the desk beside her, there's an old length of rusted chain, cleaned, sealed, quiet, not as a trophy, as a reminder. Outside the studio, in the hallway, a dog waits with a volunteer. Not Cooper. No one replaces that. This one is younger, brown-eyed, alert, wearing a simple vest the shelter uses for training. Evelyn chose him because he chose her, because he learned to settle his breathing when her hands start to shake. Before she leaves the booth, she takes off her headphones and rests her palm against the mic stand for a second, grounding herself in the cool metal. Then she finishes with the sentence she has practiced until it feels true. Cooper didn't disappear, she says into the mic. He just moved. He moved into the part of me that keeps going on. Evelyn's story isn't really about a wildfire, and it isn't just about a dog. It's about what happens when survival becomes a lifestyle instead of a season. For years, Evelyn did what many veterans learn to do exceptionally well. She adapted. She minimized risk. She stayed alert. She endured. From the outside, that can look like strength. From the inside, it often feels like standing guard over a life that never fully restarts. What Cooper changed wasn't her past. He didn't erase Fallujah. He didn't cure trauma or silence memory. What he did, quietly, physically, without language, was remind her body that the present still exists and that staying alive is not the same as living alone. The lesson here isn't that sacrifice is noble or that pain magically transforms into purpose. That would be dishonest. The lesson is smaller, harder, more real. Sometimes healing doesn't come from insight. Sometimes it comes from presence, from weight on your lap, from breath you can synchronize with, from someone or something that refuses to let you disappear when disappearing feels easier. Cooper didn't rescue Evelyn by dying for her. He saved her earlier than that, when he stood watch at her door, when he pressed her back into her body during the storm, when he insisted that the next step mattered more than the memory chasing her. And Evelyn honored that not by staying frozen in grief, but by carrying the lesson forward, by sitting with others who feel chained to their own pasts and saying without words, "You don't have to do this alone." So, here's the question we want to leave you with. Have you ever had someone, human or animal, who didn't fix you but kept you here? Someone's presence grounded you when your mind wanted to run. Someone who held the line long enough for you to take the next step. And if you've been that person for someone else, know this: even if they never said thank you, even if they had to walk on without you, you mattered more than you'll ever fully see. If this story resonates with you, we invite you to share. You can leave a comment if you're comfortable doing so publicly, or send your story privately to the email pinned in the description. If you choose, your story can remain anonymous. Because stories like Evelyn's aren't rare, they're just rarely told. And sometimes telling them, out loud, together, is how the chain finally comes off.